Von der Besen, der Jäger.
Michael here. How's everybody doing? Well, you can't really tell me how you're doing because, this is a screen. But I'm here with our boy, Krzys. Krzys, say hi to people.
Hey everyone.
And we've been talking a lot, I think probably for the better part of a year about like Attack on Titan and, how good Attack on Titan was up until it got to the ending. And we've discussed a lot. So we thought we should do a video, a kind of two-parter of sorts, where one part talks about season 1 to 3, and the next part talks about season 4 and part 1, 2, 3, and finale. Just all of season 4 and kind of our issues with that. But today we're going to start on a positive note, well, mostly positive, and talk about season 1 to 3 and kind of our thoughts on it. So, Krzys, I'll let you get the floor on this.
Yeah, Attack on Titan was an anime that was very special to my heart. I started watching it back in 2017 after I finished watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And for many years, it was my second favorite anime of all time. And it even was an inspiration behind my work in Nageia, which is available on my Wattpad account. Because I later on put my version of the Titan shifter. So, like, for example, instead of a colossal Titan, I had an ice giant, a Titan shifter with ice powers.
Nice. Yeah, I think Attack on Titan has definitely, and I've made the argument before that everything Attack on Titan season 1 was so impactful to how modern anime, and particularly modern shonen and seinen anime, is made today.
Yeah, because Attack on Titan was a bit like Fullmetal Alchemist. It wasn't your typical battle shonen. It didn't have those power escalations that often get out of hand, like we see with Dragon Ball Z and the Big Three.
Just to go on that point, I do agree, because I think a lot of the issues that Attack on Titan avoided when it came to some of the shonens of the past is they focused more on the dichotomy of living in fear with the Titans, which we'll get to, than they did when it came to...
I think the big part that made Attack on Titan so good was the mystery, because one of the things that drove you to watching it was, will Eren get to the basement?
And even one of those, like, will they finally get from under the thumb of Titans, right? And will they solve their issues, and what is causing their issues? Because there was a lot of mystery behind what Titans were and why they do what they do. So my point being in saying all of that is just to kind of illustrate some of the ways in which Attack on Titan was a huge deviation, and in a lot of ways a trendsetter for what shonens like to do today.
Eren, Armin, and Mikasa. What are your opinions on them? I mean, I did like Eren until the final chapter. I mean, I did have hesitations also in season 4 as well. But I did like Eren. Was one of my favorite protagonists, though I had other protagonists that I liked a lot more, like Edward Elric.
I mean, if we're talking season 1 to 3 solely, definitely I did like Eren. I've always said this, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with the goody two-shoes do good superhero or hero who has a one-track mind and is kind of like your typical shonen protagonist from the 90s. It is more so, how do you present a world where they come off as interesting? And I think there are a lot of shonen in the shonen graveyard that don't do that. And then there's a lot of shonen who are really good at doing that at first, but then kind of lose the plot. And I think when it came to Eren, at least for season 1 to 3, and keep in mind, Attack on Titan from a manga standpoint is not as long in comparison to these other shonens that are popular, like a Bleach or...
Yeah, those most recent shonen are not that long. I mean, the Dragon Ball and the Big Three, yes, they were very long, but Fullmetal Alchemist was only 27 volumes compared to...
But my point is, keep in mind that as it goes longer, you have to find more and more things for them to do. And so that's probably why a lot of these shonen mangakas lose the plot.
Yeah, they kind of become like Lost, where it was good at one point, but slowly it starts getting bad until it reaches the end, and it's disappointing, and you feel like you've wasted years of your own life.
Yeah, and as the great Kenny Rogers once said, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, right? So Keep that in mind when we do kind of mention the differences between the two. But I think from a character standpoint, I didn't mind that kind of like optimistic, we're gonna, go to the outside world and we're gonna beat the Titans standpoint. I didn't mind his motivation behind it, and I didn't mind his one-track mindset.
He did wanted to avenge his mother because he loved his mother, so you could understand his pain.
Exactly.
Like how Batman, you understand his pain because he lost his parents and he doesn't want anyone to feel the same pain as he did.
Exactly. I mean, we'll talk about season 4 and how that like kind of blew up completely.
Yeah. What's funny is that Eren in my fan fiction of Hero Nations, he represents the country of Latvia, and I did add to it's also available to read on my Wattpad account, his character profile.
Yeah. So I think in terms of Eren, my thoughts are like, I think standard shonen protagonist, but
he does show at times elements of character development, like in season 3, when he is in the Uprising arc, and of course in the Return to Shiganshina arc, he did show some elements of character development.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like he does definitely get more complicated as it goes along. But I think
another character that I also enjoyed, but season 4 kind of made me dislike was Armin.
I think Armin, there was one in I want to say it was season 2, where Armin is about to die. Yeah, it was season 2. No, season 3. Armin's about to die, and it's just before they're deciding who to give the Colossal Titan.
Yeah, to be honest, at the time, I was completely okay with the decision of them picking Armin over Erwin.
Oh no, for sure. I thought that was a better choice in my opinion. I think it was.
Yeah, because I thought Armin was intelligent, and I thought he was going to become a much better leader than Erwin, because Erwin, while he was a good strategist, a lot of his tactics got people killed, and Armin could be like a much better tactician and intellect. And it's disappointing what his character becomes in season 4.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, I think not just a great strategist. Erwin, okay, I'll compare him to Erwin, for example. Erwin seems like a dude who's not scared of anything, who's not afraid to put his neck out on the line, who's a leader of men, like a true leader of men, right? Whereas Armin isn't that. Armin is your tactician. He doesn't.
Yeah, he's kind of like the sort of physically weak genius.
Yeah,
so he's not
right,
but
he
I
doesn't
thought
have that
Colossal
Titan. Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, and with the Colossal, and that at the time I was completely okay with the decision of him getting the Colossal Titan, because I thought he was gonna really excel at being better than Erwin. But but that's my opinion on Armin.
Yeah, and
I liked him when in the Return to Shiganshina arc, where his character was at its peak.
No, I agree. Like, I just think that, like, with Armin, that difference is, like, an interesting little difference, because he doesn't always show that mental fortitude. So when there's moments that he does actually show that leader of men attitude, that mental toughness attitude, that bravado, it's a lot more accentuated as opposed to Erwin, who's always like that. For example, there's this one moment in season 3 that I really appreciated. He's about to die, Erwin's about to die, and they're deciding, and Eren has this flashback where Armin is getting beat up by some bullies, right? And Eren asks him something along the lines of, hey, why don't you just run away? You knew you were going to lose. And Armin comes back with, I did win because I didn't run away.
くそ、分かってたはずなのに。開けっぱなしでいいのかよ。
僕は負けてないよ。
は？
僕は逃げてない。
And I just really appreciated that, because it shows that, like, growth, or at least that reveal to us that Armin may not be the strongest. He may not be the most inspiring, and he may not have that mental fortitude at first glance, like Erwin and Levi and Eren and Mikasa for that matter. But when the chips are down and he needs to make that sacrifice and that decision, he will be the first person to do it, at least in the first 3 seasons. And there's something about that I really appreciated. So Armin as a character, I think, is very complex, is very deep, and I really liked how Isayama wrote him for the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, Finally, we have Mikasa, the main female lead. I did originally like her, but that's probably because I was blinded by the cool action because she was physically strong and was not a damsel in distress. Which, if you watch anime like Bleach Naruto, is probably annoying. Yeah, unfortunately, she does suffer from what fans dubbed Orihime syndrome, where her character's sole personality is obsessing over a guy. Orihime syndrome is now kind of my red flag for a bad ending, because the moment a girl is obsessed with a guy, she will never let go of that obsession, even when many professional writers say she probably should just grow out of it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I liked fanfiction Bleach Volume 75, because at least it gave Orihime, in my opinion, character development.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, but I do want to speak to that part you mentioned about liking Mikasa, and I don't fault you or any fans for doing that in the beginning. I think we all have to keep in mind that at the time Attack on Titan Season 1 came out, we were just past the Big 3 era, or the Big 3 era was reaching its twilight. So, for example, we just came out of Naruto, which was, famous for having a lot of female characters that aesthetically looked great, but for the most part, there was a clear line between the combat abilities of men, combat abilities of women, right? And we didn't like it. One Piece, I think at this point, if not in the Dressrosa arc, was just finishing the Dressrosa arc. So by this point, a lot of those female characters, like your Nico Robin and your Nami and Boa, were not necessarily as powerful as they once were, and were kind of declining a little bit. So to see a Mikasa, right? And keep in mind, My Hero Academia doesn't come out until I think
2016.
Yeah, until late, around the time Season 2 comes out. So when Mikasa comes out in Season 1, and we don't necessarily have a full grasp of her character yet, and she comes out and she's slashing these titans down, she's getting
it does look cool,
here, right?
And
it's such a breath of fresh air, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But it's only once I saw the ending that I realized Mikasa is not a good character. And
100%.
in fact, I know a lot of people like to hate on Eren and Armin, but at least they had some moments of character development in the first 3 seasons. Mikasa has none. She has no character development, as far as I know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just what I'm trying to do is create the picture as to why I think a lot of people really like Mikasa in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's
she
because the
seemed
damsel in distress is
Yeah.
really, really annoying. Even as a male, I find it annoying.
For sure, and I think to see her not be that, at least early, and to be sort of intelligent, and even her motivations as to why she sticks by Eren, I think a lot of people were for it. We're like, okay, I think this is going to be the next staple and the standard for how we make female characters better.
Like Full Metal Alchemist, this one.
Yeah,
is a standard for good female characters in a shonen.
And you would even make the assumption that at least for Season 1, because you had people like Hanj and Sasha and Annie.
Yeah, Annie was a pretty good villain for Season 1.
Yeah, so I'd say all that to say that I don't necessarily think the female characters, in comparison to other shonen, are that bad. Even Mikasa, they're just disappointing because there was no growth with them.
Let's get to the arcs. So we already have the sad beginning that Eren is now officially a scout. And of course, they're getting the wall is broken up again by the Colossal Titan. And I would say it does give a shocker because you get to see, you think Eren dies, which kind of gives you Game of Thrones vibes. But later on it's revealed he's still alive. But it does reveal a cool power, which is Titan shifting.
For sure. I think in the first arc, there is the Eren wants to be a scout. He loves the scouts. He wants to then, obviously the infamous scene that's in episode 1 where Eren's mom dies, and they go and become a scout. And then one of the under talked about parts is the trainer intentionally tampering with Eren's gear.
But that was revealed in Season 3. the tampering of the gear.
Yes, and that's the reveal, but I'm not necessarily talking about the reveal. I'm talking about what happens because he tampered with the gear. And we know that Eren struggles with the ODM gear. And that's important because when you're first seeing Eren kind of work the ODM gear, you're thinking, oh, he's going to get it right off the bat. He's going to look cool. And, it's going to be him, Mikasa. They're going to start killing every Titan, right? Come to find out, Eren can barely stay straight with the gear, right? And I really like that subversion of the whole thing.
I did quite like the ODM gear. It makes it look like the characters are swinging through the city and forests like Spider-Man.
Yeah, right. In fact, there was an actual crossover comic, so to speak, of the Avengers battling the Titans to see if they could get something going.
Another character that could also work, Marvel character that could also work in the Attack on Titan would also be Ant-Man because of his because he can become a giant and he can also shrink.
Yeah.
To less than a centimeter.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. It's true. Like that would have been interesting as well.
Yeah, so that's the first arc reveals, of course, the Titan shifters. Then the second part of season 1 is the female Titan arc, and of course, Eren is trying to master his Titan shifting.
And yeah, that was a very interesting arc as well because a lot of people don't know what to make of it. Imagine these Titans have been killing people for sport. It seems like. Only to find out that one of your own ranks is one, or can transform into one.
Yeah, people do often joke about how a lot of these characters who hate this become this, like Ichigo hates Hollows, but he then is a Hollow, and later it's revealed he's a Quincy as well, or how Light hates murderers, but he himself becomes a murderer, and Eren becomes a Titan.
It's a very interesting parallel, but yeah, I think that when that comes out and it turns out he is a Titan, and not only that, there's another female Titan who also could be a shifter, and that starts to find out who the shifter is and how they can make decisions.
Yeah, I think it does give a little bit of mystery. So I think Isayama is very besides action, Isayama is pretty good at developing a mystery.
Yeah, right. And you know what I will also say too about Isayama is he's a mangaka who somehow figured out how to properly show how a fight would actually go, yet did it with giant kaiju-like beings. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like a fight between deep power. Now, granted, it's because no one really has energy being blast like that, or what you would consider like super over-the-top superpowers. Besides the fact that they can be really tall. But he kind of a lot of his early work demonstrated how fights would actually go, with Annie kind of being like a very good martial artist and a very well-rounded martial artist at that, and Eren taking some of that. And I it's something, I appreciate, because as I've talked about in my videos to the rooftops, a lot of people have very interesting misconceptions about how fights go. And as a result, you get a lot of these really mind-numbing arguments about how Goku would do in an MMA fight, how Luffy would do in an MMA fight, etc., etc. And for Attack on Titan to kind of go against the grain, like I said, again, a breath of fresh air.
Well, Isayama did take inspiration from real-life wrestlers. I mean, the Armored Titan is actually based off an American wrestler. He also based the Attack Titan on a popular Japanese wrestler.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think a lot of this was like a good breath of fresh air. Things like the combat, the story plot, the fact that Isayama wasn't afraid to hold on to plot lines and make you wait to get to like the certain elements of the plot, and not just give it away an episode later, right? He was even things like how Mikasa was in the beginning. A lot of these things, he was very good at just, providing a nice breath of fresh air, a difference, a contrast to a lot of things that we were seeing in the 2000s and early 2010s.
I mean, it was like Full Metal, to me, it was like Full Metal Alchemist, a masterpiece that comes once in a while. I did forget to ask you, what was your opinion on other characters? Like, you did like Sasha because she was a good comic relief, yes?
Well, not necessarily just because she's a good comic relief, but she just seemed like a complete character. Like, yeah, she was funny. Like, the potato thing was pretty funny. And
it made a lot of potato memes that she gets the title Potato Girl.
Yeah.
And what's your opinion on Jean?
John,
The
you know
only
what? It's
character
funny.
that I so far know of that has a French name.
Well, like that's the thing with a lot of these characters is that like anime writers like to do this thing, and you know who I blame for it? I blame Kishimoto, because anime writers are very ambitious when they're writing their side characters. They write like a whole cast of side characters more often than not, and you can't really follow up on these characters because there's just too many, right? You just have too many, and you fall into a trap of character bloat. With John and Coney especially, you don't feel that. You feel like Isayama's giving them a lot of time.
Yeah, Jean had an interesting character development because at first he wanted to be part of the military police. Then he discovered that they're not what a cracked actor to be, and it's better. And he found that it was a lot better being a scout.
I love like the thing about his character is he's not necessarily like afraid or scared, but he's such a realist. However, there's something in him that compels him to do the right thing all the time. You know what I'm saying? And
you know what's funny is that Jean, the character that you could joke had the only French guy in the series. He was actually for a brief time, for some time, he was Isayama's favorite character until Isayama changed his opinion and said Reiner was his favorite character.
In my opinion, I would agree too. I actually do think Reiner is my favorite character in this entire series, even after it's ended. Before my name was Michael Talks Anime on YouTube, it was actually Michael the Warrior on YouTube. And the reason why is because of the Warrior speech, right, that he gives around season 2. But we'll get to that.
I would say moving on to season 2 now.
So second season. So at this point, Annie has been...
Yeah, because that's when season 2 aired. During the time when season 2 finished, well, months after it was finished, that's when I got into Attack on Titan and anime in general. Well, my first anime was Death Note in 2016, but it was only in 2017 when when it was shown on Netflix after I finished Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I decided to watch Attack on Titan.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about season 1 to season 2 is that there was famously a very long wait, which was obviously a sign of things to come when it came to the series.
4 years, actually.
A 4-year wait between season 1 and season 2, which was, in my opinion, from a business perspective, one of the worst things they could have done. Because Attack on Titan...
Well, at least, let's be up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of me is like, at least Isayama was given 4 years to make more material, because often mangakas are rushed.
Oh, 100%. I do agree with that. Like, it is true. And, Isayama was given a lot of time to kind of make material before they got into that filler range. But I would make the argument that on the other side of it is that's 4 years of momentum that you've lost. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about a story, especially anime, it's very tough to sell people on replay value, especially nowadays. There's so much more anime out there. There's so much more good quality stuff out there. And so as a result, you lose a lot of momentum in the story. And I even remember, because I watched season 1 and then I had to wait a little bit for season 2. In my case,
I only first watched season 1 in 2017, so...
Yeah, so like you would have been able to see season 1 and 2 back to back. But in my case, when I remember going back and watching season 2 and thinking like it was such a deviation from the story, until watching the last episode season 1 back, realizing this was gonna like tie in, and that Reiner was super important.
I would say, season 2 does have a lot of great moments, which I will probably get to, but it does make me fully appreciate season 2 when we get to season 3, when they did the Uprising arc and the return to the Shiganshina arc. That made me appreciate season 2. Yeah, what's cool about it is that season 2 gave a good scene about where Sasha got to shine, and apparently that's where, from what I heard, according to rumors, originally Isayama was actually gonna kill off Sasha.
Oh, okay. Well, good thing they didn't. And a bunch of other side characters got to shine in season 2 as well.
It did give 2 side characters from season 1 their time to shine. It was Ymir. By the way, for all of you guys wondering, it's pronounced Ymir, but not Ymir. There is no A. But so yeah, commonly to distinguish her from from Ymir Fritz, we often say freckled Ymir.
So what I would say with season 2 is the start is that, I really did like the fact that this is one of the few things about about Attack on Titan, I think that kind of changed the game in a lot of ways, changed the game about how shonen is done, is that what was season 2 really did is, at least for the first 6 episodes, is they said, hey, we're going to take a risk, right? We're going to not talk about Eren and Mikasa for not just one episode, not just 2 episodes, but they did it for 6 episodes, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very ballsy of them to make that decision because, here we were in season 1 with these 3 main characters of Armin, Eren, and Mikasa, or Eren, Mikasa, Armin. And they were front and center in the plans. They were front and center in a lot of things. And they said, yeah, we're going to focus on, not just like the side characters, but characters that are like very in the background in Reiner, Bertolt, Ymir, and Krista, right? So I thought that was really interesting. And I think a lot of shonen since have really followed suit in not being afraid to deviate.
Another shonen that I would say before Attack on Titan that also took risks and was very different from a typical shonen was Full Metal Alchemist.
But I would not like that though. Not like that. Not like that. That was, I think, in my opinion, much more ballsy. Of course, yeah, like they were a lot more complete in their characters, for sure, with Full Metal Alchemist, but not to the point of giving a whole 6 episodes in a shonen. Like, this isn't a shoujo, Mike.
No.
A shonen, right? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it did give freckled Ymir time to shine, and it was nice they showed her development, and we also discovered that Krista's real name was Historia, and that she's from the Rice family. That's how you pronounce it, Rice, not Reese. So you might have heard from people.
So yeah, like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on kind of the plot line of season 2? Because we're gonna get to the big one, of course, right?
I would say my favorite moment from season 2 to this day was the reveal of who the Armored and Colossal Titan were. To me, that was because I sensed the whole rage that Eren has, and later on we have a really cool fight between Eren and Reiner.
Thank you for bringing this up because I absolutely love those collection of episodes. Episode, I think it was 6, 7, 8, and 9 technically. I didn't like the fact that they killed off Ymir a bit too early, in my opinion, but
Ymir, many people have complained how Ymir was basically killed off screen.
Yeah, and here's the thing about that too that I didn't like is, and we'll get to it, but I think for the positives on this particular section of episodes, I really love these particular level of episodes. First of all, like I mentioned, before it was Michael Talks Anime, it was Michael the Warrior. That was my YouTube name. I changed the Michael Talks Anime because it's just a lot more SEO friendly, But Michael the Warrior was my YouTube name. And the reason why is because I actually started my channel right after watching this episode where he reveals himself and he says something to the effect of, the true path of the warrior is the path that leads to the end.
As a warrior, no road left but the one that leads to the end. Reiner, right now? Here? We're doing this?
You remember that part? I'm talking about? Where he's like, the true path of the warrior.
I do remember he did make a speech that it is one of my favorite reveals of all time in anime. Even you could joke that someone deserves an Oscar for making that kind of a reveal. It was a reveal in my opinion.
Yeah,
and you could feel Eren's rage because he felt like he lost a friend, someone he trusted. Well, 2 people he trusted, because they turned out they were the cause of his pain.
But it's like at the same time, it's like you could feel like the purpose, right? Where it's like, we have to finish, right? You could feel the pain and anger and sadness around the entire thing. And just from a quality and production standpoint, the animation was on point. The soundtrack in the back, chef's kiss, the dialogue. And you know, by the way, I would say this too. This is another one of those dub better than the sub moments. Because if you watch it back in
the English
dub,
dub for Attack on Titan is often hated on. People often say how Bryce Papenbrook was miscast, and sometimes even I say they should have hired Vic Mignogna or Johnny Young Bosch or even Richard Ian Cox to voice Eren.
You know what? I agree, because those are usually those, like, I wouldn't say bratty. Those are the guys you would cast for bratty characters per se, but they are the angrier characters, and I think they would have brought the anger out on the when it comes to Eren a bit more. But here's the thing: do you want, in that instance, I would say you would want more of a scared, fearful, but doesn't know how to portray it guy in Eren than more so an outright angry guy that you got with Richard Ian Cox and Inuyasha. You get what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And you can tell how scared Eren is in this moment because of the casting. And Reiner's upset. And then you got Armin with that runaway part. Oh my god. He's like, Eren, run away. And then they all transform, and just, it's such a great scene. And there's something about that speech Reiner says that just to this day it's one of those few things in anime that gets in my heart. It warms my heart, because it's, even now in hindsight, it's a little more like diluted, but at the time, for whatever reason, I can sympathize with that idea of, like, the only path I have to my survival is the end. You get what I'm trying to say? Right?
Yeah,
and when you're in the... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the final episode of season 2, where I would say...
Sorry. Can I mention this one part too? The fight scene in season 2, right? Was such a breath of fresh air too, between Eren and Reiner, because this fight scene in season 2 was one of the few fight scenes that felt realistic, in the sense that they're doing judo, they're doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they're doing boxing, and you got a little bit of that in season 1, but not like you did at like a full scale like in season 2. Here's my favorite part of the fight too. So Reiner is stuck in the triangle choke that Eren locked up. This has like nothing to do with like the plot, by the way, but he pulls up to escape the triangle choke because he's going to do a stack escape. But Eren, realizing he's about to do a stack escape, switches his feet by gripping the elbow backwards. Not backward, but like his backwards, Reiner's forwards, and then sliding his foot over for an armbar. Top shelf jujitsu stuff, at least for what anime was doing at the time. Top shelf jujitsu. So yeah. Sorry. Anyway, let's go ahead. Final episode, season 2.
Yeah. So the final episode of season 2 had a good moment where Eren discovers a new power he has that he can control Titans. Well, at the time, it was later explained it's because if he touches someone of royal descent, he can access the powers of the founding Titan and control other Titans. And in that speech, you do see his frustration that he feels like he can't, that all the hard effort he tries is for nothing at times, and you feel his pain.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that a lot of people use that scene, especially the shippers, use that scene to show that Eren loves Mikasa in that scene. What's your opinion on that?
Well, yeah, no, I agree. Like I like I said with you, we talked about this off air, is that Isayama, I think, was trying to go into a direction. Like I don't think he's just a bad writer in general, or a bad romantic writer, but I think he was going into a direction that was just out of his depth. And you could tell there are parts... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because what's funny is that after that chapter was released, he did say that Eren sees Mikasa as a mother or a sister, apparently, according to an interview, but more of a mother. Well, and later on, it left a little bit of a hint of what's the truth about Titans, and that they might be human, which plays into season 3, the next season. So, what are your opinions of the Uprising arc?
Can I say that Kenny is such a fun character. Like he might
Oh
not necessarily
yeah,
be
don't
the
worry.
best
I
in
like
terms of
Kenny.
written.
He was.
I
I feel like a
I
lot of
love
those characters that were introduced pre-time skip were a lot better than the ones that were post-time skip, like Gabby.
Yeah. Well, I have my thoughts on Gabby. I have my thoughts on Gabby, and
I don't hate Gabby. No, I don't despise her. No.
yeah. Yeah, no, I don't hate Gabby at all. But like I guess we'll get to Gabby eventually because I don't hate
when we
Gabby.
do the season 4 review. But
Yeah.
so I did like Kenny. He was a cool character, and I did
He's
like
fun.
that. Yeah,
He's very
and I did
fun.
like I did like the second episode when Levi is going through, swinging through the scenes like some kind of a Spider-Man with swords, and later on he jumps into a bar and someone loses a sausage,
Yeah. Yeah.
and later on
No,
Kenny comes in and he's all like, "Show yourself."
Yeah. You know, I you know what I like about like the dynamic between Kenny and Levi, and first like, and we'll talk about too also like the dynamic of the military police and like how infighting happens. Because what I like about the dynamic between Kenny and Levi is there's a movie out there called Encanto. Have you seen Encanto, or have you heard of it? Yeah.
That Disney movie, Encanto.
Yeah, the Disney movie. And one of the themes that Encanto talks about, and there's other movies that do this as well that Disney's kind of been leaning into, is they talk about generational trauma being passed down, right? This idea of like someone's trauma, someone passes down their trauma to the people they love, right? And Kenny has this rough upbringing. He's got like this really, really rough time through his life and through childhood. He meets up with the king.
They did explain in his backstory that originally Kenny, because he's an Ackerman, that his family was hunted by the royal family.
Exactly,
I mean,
right?
what I do like about the Uprising.
Hold on. I just want to explain this part because I think a lot of times people just kind of see Kenny killing people and whatever, and they're like, "Oh, cool character, right? He had a big role." But there's something more to Kenny, and the thing that's more to Kenny is that Kenny has goals. He has ambitions. He has he follows a plan, and he believes in this plan. But his trauma pushes Levi away, right? And he actually does care for Levi in his own perverse way. But his trauma presses down, right?
He is his nephew, after all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
right?
the part. What I would say, what I do like about the Uprising arc, it does give a lot into the backstory of Levi, Erwin. Well, sorry, I do pronounce it Erwin because of the English dub. That's how they pronounce it, as Erwin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And Historia, they delve into their backstories.
Right, like, and I like that, and I like the fact that they don't like again, Isayama I don't think is a bad writer, and I think he tries his best, right, to balance the scales between talking about these really interesting psychological aspects to how humans work and spicing it up for anime. The problem that he runs into, and you see it a little bit even in the Uprising arc, is that
unfortunately the Uprising arc did introduce a plot point that did become a plot hole, and that was apparently this is where they established that Ackermen are not affected by the founding titan. But then in the season 4, somehow Eren was able to use his powers on Levi and Mikasa, even though it was established that it shouldn't really work.
Yeah. No, it's true, and you know, I think some of that is burnout as well. Like he's just like, okay, let me just make a power where he can communicate with everybody, and then it's just and he's not thinking because he's burned out. But unfortunately, and you see a little bit in here, is there's just holes in people's thinking. There's holes in their decision making. A lot of characters drink the dum-dum juice, as I like to call it, where a character who otherwise wouldn't make a bad decision like that just all of a sudden does because of
kind of like how Tyrion Lannister in season 8 made a really bad decision where he's raising all the dead people, and he put all the women and children in a crypt where they keep all the dead people.
Yeah, it's like come on, you know. So he makes these Kenny makes these like really interesting head scratching decisions that to this day like just don't really jive with me all that well for his character. But I do like the fact that they tried things with the idea of generational trauma and how families hate each other in infighting.
Yeah,
And
but
it's a common theme between.
what is annoying is that it did establish later on something that became a plot hole in season 4, which was the whole Ackerman being supposedly being unaffected by the founding titan, hence why the king tried to order to kill them. And you do get a lot of the explanation of how the walls were made, and that was cool.
And also just like in terms of like some of like the other negatives, like the idea of the royal family really trying to just like kill their own people at the end, or like
Giga
have them atone
also,
for their sins.
Giga also pointed out what's so special? Why is it that they are of the royal family? Are all Eldians descendants of the royal family? So why is it that people like Historia have royal blood and it's different from the regulars? So
they just never explain that stuff. And season 3 is where you start to see things unravel. But there are some interesting themes about season 3 that I can be charitable to.
Let's get to part 2, the part that people say is the peak of Attack on Titan, the return to Shiganshina arc. And I remember when I first read it in the manga, well, back in 2017, because I started reading season 3 and the first season 3, whatever it was, season 3 and 4 in 2017, because I was impatient. And I just wanted to see what happens next. So impatience kind of drove me to read the manga.
Unpopular opinion, I don't think it's the peak. I don't think it's the like the pinnacle of what Attack on Titan is, but I do think it shows a lot of what Attack on Titan does at its best, which is interesting reveals, getting to the bottom of a mystery, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I sometimes jokingly call it the Soul Society arc of Attack on Titan, because people say it's the peak, and many people say after that peak it falls off. Yeah.
No, I think I agree with the idea that like it does a lot of the things that Attack on Titan does well, and you can argue it does it at its best. But the problem is that like okay. So let me explain it like this in this plot. So they need to go to Shiganshina to go to Eren's basement, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And they are being stalked by what we later find out is the Beast Titan, right?
Yes,
okay.
Beast Titan.
And he can talk and everything. All right. Mm-hmm. So the problem that I have with this arc in particular is whenever writers run out of ideas of character dynamics, of people thinking smart in certain situations, whenever writers are burnt out, you know what they always do? They always fall back to? Let's have a war between two sides. Rather than some sort of plan to get around the Beast Titan, to get to Eren's father's basement. Because just sending people to their death seems kind of not smart. And this is where I feel like Isayama starts to get burnt out. Because he starts to just do this thing where it's like, okay, two people in a war, go at it. And no one's using their brains. No one's really thinking things through. You don't see any character dynamics. You don't see any kind of like dissension or, the humanity of both sides. Or lack thereof, right? You just see two people fighting, and I get it. The reveal of the Beast Titan was cool. Erwin's speech was awesome.
And as we ride to certain death, we trust our successors to do the same for us! Because my soldiers do not buckle or yield when faced with the cruelty of this world! My soldiers push forward! My soldiers scream out! My soldiers rage!
The whole thing about who are we gonna revive?
And also the whole Reiner versus Eren round 2 was also a cool fight scene.
Yeah, like I get the idea of like, okay, these are cool things that Attack on Titan does best, but I think at this point, we lost sight of why these things are cool. And it's cool because of the dynamics between everyone involved. But don't get that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what's strangely enough is sometimes is that many people will say that's where after the return to Shiganshina, when they get to the basement, because we get the basement reveal, and many people liked it, but also I remember many people we're skeptical and we're not quite happy with the basement reveal.
I'm not a fan of it in hindsight, but I think the idea of like revealing that there's like a whole outside world is.
And also after the basement reveal, they revealed that there are 9 Titan shifters and a 13-year rule. That apparently a Titan shifter can only live 13 years, which was foreshadowed in season 2 when Reiner tells Bertolt that, well, you better confess to Annie quick because we don't have enough time. But
Yeah.
sadly, those 2 questions, which were the questions I really wanted a proper and solid answer to, never get explained.
No, it's true. But yeah, no, I do think like if people, it depends. I think when it comes to this arc and this particular part of season 2, I think it depends on what people value. If you value a lot of those fun, over the top aspects of Attack on Titan, which is fair to do. Like I think a lot of times people try to talk down to people who like the fun things about anime without looking at the deeper aspects of it. I think when you do that, you come off as pretentious if you talk down to people on that. And to me, I would say I like those elements too. I like the reveals. I like the fight scenes that are grounded a little more in reality. I like the fact that Isayama doesn't always show all his cards until he absolutely has to, but at the same time, it feels like he has a plan. But I think this is the decline of where characters actually start acting like their characters, and develop and grow, and the dynamics.
Yeah,
are
I mean,
just
the final arc of the pre-time skip was still a great arc to watch. It's still fun to watch.
Absolutely. A lot of my criticisms of this arc are looking at it in hindsight and looking at the
Yeah,
problems
that's
that
the problem.
start to
Like
show.
the basement reveal, because many people say that's where the Attack on Titan starts to go bad. But most people before it, most people liked the basement reveal before the time skip happened.
No, absolutely. And I'll even say, like, even before the time skip happened, I absolutely was on board for when that ending scene where Eren goes and points to the ocean and says,
"Yeah, it was actually a good way to end it. In fact, you could have said that's a good way to end part 1 of Attack on Titan and maybe write a sequel." Some people even jokingly said Isayama should have just taken a long break, think it through, and then write Attack on Titan 2 or just continue the story.
No, I agree. I'm with you on board. I really like the arc, but it's just when you look at a lot of the issues in hindsight, if I had to be a fly on the wall of the manga cover room, I would say what happened is Isayama got tired, right? Like he had a lot of ideas that he wanted to put out there, but he got tired. And you start to see a lot of the mistakes happen in the character dynamics. Because
most of the problem starts happening after the time skip, particularly with characters like Armin and Eren, of course, Historia. The treatment of their characters after the time skip.
Yeah, they just I wouldn't necessarily say that they start acting lazy, but it just feels like their characters are a little more one note and not as full as they were for the first 2.5 seasons, in my opinion.
I mean, Armin does have his peak moments in the Return to Shiganshina arc, where he shows off his intelligence.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time to end the video here. Thanks for joining me, Chris. And like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you want to see other videos like this. And until next time, see you soon.